Good afternoon and welcome back to C's Listening Room. It's been a little while since I've uploaded a video and I apologize for that. But I'm back. I'm going to be discussing a childhood favorite of mine, an album I listened to quite a bit when I was in middle school and the beginning of high school. So probably about 14, 15 years old when this was a personal favorite of mine. This is Classics from Triumph, and unfortunately, I lost the CD. I'm still trying to find it. This is not an easy album to find, so I'm kind of worried about this. I'm hoping I don't have to get a replacement for it because it's not going to be easy to locate one. But this is a compilation, greatest hits disc from the Canadian power trio Triumph. Now, you say Canadian power trio, you obviously think of Rush. And unfortunately, I think that's what too many people were thinking of when this band came out in the late 70s. I think a lot of people just thought that they were a Rush copy, or they were trying to capitalize on Rush and their success and hoping that they could be Rush 2.0. And I don't know if that's really the case. Some people thought this group was a little too commercial. Some people thought this group probably was imitating another band or two, notably Rush. But I'm not going to jump to that conclusion. It was not a real popular band in the U.S. I think it did pretty well in Canada. I think they were pretty popular in their homeland. Critics hated them, but there are a lot of bands that critics didn't like that I did like. So, the way it is. But to me, Rik Emmett is possibly the most underrated guitar player. Growing up, I thought this guy was great. I still do. His name is not even remembered. It's not even like you mentioned Rik Emmett and people are like, oh yeah, I forgot about that guy. It's like people don't even know who he is anymore. There are a lot of names that come up on lists of underrated guitarists. And I'm yet to see Rik Emmett's even mentioned in any of those conversations. But he was definitely one of my favorites growing up. To me, he was the guy. He was one of the guys that made the guitar seem like a really cool instrument. And I started really paying close attention to guitar solos and stuff growing up. And I would definitely say he was one of the biggest influences for that, for me paying close attention to guitar solos and starting to listen more carefully to the guitar as an instrument in music and in songs. Definitely one of the people that impacted me the most early on was Rik Emmett. And this album definitely was an influencing factor there. But Rik Emmett was one of the vocalists, and he was the guitarist. And Gil Moore was the drummer, and he was the other vocalist. And then they had the silent member, Mike Levine, who played bass and sometimes keyboards. And he I don't think really contributed as much musically to the band, and he didn't sing or anything. So he's always kind of this mystery guy to me. But I think their lack of attention and the lack of critical acclaim was unfortunate, because to me, Rik Emmett as a guitar player deserved so much more credit than he's ever gotten. I think he really should have gotten more due than he's ever received. But hopefully maybe this video will help get him noticed. But one problem I think the band had, and it's one thing that I really liked about the band, and one thing that I think made them great, is Rik Emmett's involvement. Because he had a lot of influences, obviously. He had a lot of musical inspiration from different genres. And I went on this binge not too long ago where I went on YouTube and I listened to about 4 different studio albums from Triumph that people had uploaded. And each one of them had an instrumental cut, mostly featuring Rik Emmett. Sometimes he'd do something that was kind of jazz influenced. Sometimes it would be like a neoclassical influence. Sometimes it would be, it was blues. It was everything. he had a lot of influences, and he was extremely versatile, and so they would have to do instrumental cuts on each album to showcase that. And why the guy never got more recognition, I don't know. But I think a lot of people didn't want to hear that on a record that was supposed to be hard rock and heavy metal. They just wanted headbanging music. And I think maybe he was too good for that. I think maybe Rik Emmett didn't want to be constrained to just doing the same rock and roll, hard rock, sound-alike stuff, album after album after album, song after song after song. And they were very accommodating to allow him to experiment a lot and branch out and try different and new things on the albums. But I think maybe the fans really weren't ready for that. They wanted like headbanging stuff. I think that might have been one of the problems. And maybe that side of the band was a little too, I don't know how to say it. Maybe that side of the band is just a little too experimental, a little too outside of the realm of hard rock and straightforward heavy metal. And then, some of the keyboard effects and everything weren't really what they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear, power chords and all that. But that was what you listened to the Gilmour tracks for. Gilmour was great at straightforward hard rock, whereas Rik Emmett would experiment around a little bit and try some new things that maybe didn't touch the nerve that the Rik Emmett stuff did, and really wasn't quite what people were hoping for. But I think that's kind of a bonus. That allowed the versatility to grow even more. That allowed greater variety in their music. So you got two different musicians with two different kinds of influences and two different approaches to the whole thing. And I mean, you could fast forward through some of the songs you didn't like, skip over a couple of songs. If you didn't like Rik's excursions, you go through those and just go to the Gil songs. If Gil stuff was a little too standard hard rock for you, go through those and go to the Rik Emmett songs. And I mean, I think they balanced each other out really nicely. But I just don't know if maybe that fans felt differently than I did. I always liked that. That was one thing I liked about the band, is the two different musical sides from the two different artists. But it's a pretty good compliment. I mean, this is a really good, basically a really good introduction to Rik Emmett's guitar playing. It's a really good introduction to the two sides of the band, the Gil side and the Rik side. Obviously, some people are going to like some songs more than others, but I think it holds the listener's interest for sure. Rock and Roll Machine is the final song on the album. That was from 1977, and it's got an extended guitar solo in it that's definitely worth listening to. Reminds me a lot of something you hear on a Van Halen album, but that preceded Van Halen's debut album by about a year. So why Rik Emmett did not get a lot of notoriety, I really don't know, because he was making Van Halen sounding solos a year before Van Halen. Criminally underrated. But a lot of good straightforward hard rock on here too, for those who just want the more party rock stuff. There's something for different tastes on here. And I mean, you could go out and buy any of their earlier albums, and you could also get those instrumental tracks that are not included on here, and you can hear these songs in their original context, and I would recommend that as well. But if this is the only album you can find, if you can find it, this is a good intro to the band. Again, these songs are not in their original context. They're highlights from all the other good albums, or I think are good albums. So I don't want to give this one a straight 5 out of 5, because I mean, as I said, it's a compilation that covers several different albums worth of material. It's like a mix album. So I'll I'll give this one a 4 out of 5. Just because the well-chosen tracks, it's got all the hits, it's got all the songs that most people liked. It's got the songs that almost made them into stars. And basically, I would start out with this one, and whatever song you like the best, find out what album it was off of, and then go find that album on YouTube and hear the song in the original context. But I mean, I haven't listened to this one for a little while. I really want to listen to it again, but as I said, the CD's missing, so this kind of worries me. Don't know what happened to it, but old favorite of mine, and I still really like this material, and I still think Rik Emmett is a painfully underrated guitar player. So compromise, give this one a 4 out of 5, even though it's merely a sampler album from many different albums, classics from Triumph. And that's about that. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you later.